Welcome to Center of the Universe. I'm Will Roye, the managing partner, and behind me is 60,000 pounds of grain getting ready to make some delicious beer. We've been brewing beer for 10 years now. I'm a Tampa native, but I've lived in Virginia since 2000. After 7 years of playing in the major leagues and having brewing beer as a hobby, my brother and I turned our hobby into a business, and now follow me inside and I'll show you how to make some beer. So the grain that was in the silo outside is then augered in here. Our brewers will enter in how many pounds of grain they'll need from our base grain. The grain will flow in to the feed pro and then into our malt mill. So once it gets to the malt mill, all of that malted barley will be cracked open, allowing us to reach the goodies on the inside that we'll eventually use to create the alcohol in our beers. Now behind me is where all of that malted barley that we just cracked open in our malt mill falls into the mash tun. The mash tun is where water will be pouring in as the grain flows in. It'll all mix up with our mash rakes, and then it'll sit there for about an hour. And what happens during that time is all the starches that were in that malted barley will convert to sugar. And sugar is what we need at the end result so that the yeast can eat it and create that alcohol. Once the mashing process is done, we will then run it off into this tank and then into our boil kettle. Once the beer is in the boil kettle, now it's time to bring that beer up to a boil, and at that point that's when we start adding things like hops, or if we're doing any spicing we can add it in at that point too. We will boil the beer from anywhere from an hour to 2 hours depending on the style. There's two different ways to get additional alcohol in beer. Either A, you have more sugar, which means you use more grain, or B, you boil the beer longer so that the water evaporates and that ratio of sugar to water keeps increasing. So once we put it over to the fermenter, then we'll end up with a higher alcohol beverage. Once the beer is done boiling, we have to cool it down. So we use our heat exchanger, which is right here underneath our brew platform. The wort comes in line and travels up to the fermenter, where once it's in there, we'll pitch some yeast on it and begin the fermentation process. So once the beer is transferred over into our bright tanks, it's carbonated and now it's ready to package. So we do both kegs and cans here at Center Universe. And then after 3 to 5 weeks of production, it's ready to drink. So not only do we brew here at Center Universe, but we also have a tap room. We've got an arcade, we've got a beer garden, we have events here all the time. Or you can just stop in any day of the week and grab a fresh beer.
Be sure to watch the full episode of 8 at 4 for this story and others by visiting richmond.com/VVN or by downloading the VVN app on your Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV streaming device.